Hey everyone, and welcome to this deep dive, where we're going to try to decode the future, at least when it comes to business trends, specifically for 2024 and beyond. We're going to cut through the noise and hopefully give you those aha moments. We've got a really interesting mix of sources for this deep dive, from big picture reports from Coursera to Forbes Insights, and even a peek into the minds of the Forbes Technology Council. We've got a good blend of those broad overviews and then some really deep dives into specific sectors. But before we get lost in all the details, I think it's good to kind of take a step back and define what we mean when we say business trends.
Absolutely. I mean, I think sometimes we think we know what these things are, but until we actually take a step back and define it. So really, it's about understanding these indicators, where things are headed in different industries, and how they're going to impact work, whether that's through new opportunities, potential challenges, or whatever it might be.
I like that.
So it's about really just understanding the forces that are shaping, the future of how we work and how we can, best work with those changes and use them to our advantage.
Yeah, it's like you're saying, it's not just about keeping up, it's about using these trends to make smarter decisions, whether we're talking about someone's career or running a business. And speaking of trends, Coursera, in their report, identified 16 for 2024. 16. So let's jump into some of the big ones. And I think the one that everyone's talking about is, of course, AI, and specifically generative AI. Algorithms that are generating written content, designs, even codes. Pretty mind-blowing, but it also kind of begs the question, is it all hype?
Well, and that's the thing, right? I think a lot of times you hear these buzzwords and you're not really sure what the impact is actually going to be. But what's interesting about this technology, particularly in the AI space, is it has the potential to really democratize things, particularly creativity and innovation.
Yeah.
Because it gives individuals, even small businesses, access to tools that previously they wouldn't have had access to.
Yeah, it levels the playing field in terms of resources.
Exactly. And that's a game changer, in my opinion.
Yeah, for sure. It's like giving everyone superpowers.
Yeah.
But technology is just one piece of the puzzle, right?
Yeah.
The way we work is changing too. And we've got, from Coursera to Reed, even the GWT podcast, everyone's saying that remote work is here to stay. But what does that actually mean for companies moving forward?
That's a great question. And I think one of the things the GWT podcast highlighted that I thought was so interesting is it's not just about location flexibility anymore, which is how it started, right? Yeah. It's actually reshaping company cultures and requiring this whole new set of leadership skills that we haven't really needed before. So, how do you build trust? How do you foster collaboration?
Maintain morale.
Exactly.
When your team's not even in the same room.
Right. Exactly. And so, it's those skills that are going to set leaders apart in this new era.
So it's less about managing where people work and more about managing how they work together, even when they're miles apart. And I guess this kind of ties back to, we've got this remote work, but if you're job hunting in this environment, we've got all these trends. What are companies actually looking for? What are those skills?
That's where this whole idea of skills-based hiring comes in, which both Coursera and Reed really emphasized in their reports, saying that formal credentials are becoming, less important.
Less important than what you can actually do.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
So they say show, don't tell.
Exactly. So you need to go beyond just that traditional resume and highlight those in-demand skills.
Which kind of leads to the next question of, how are companies even finding candidates in this crazy world?
Yeah.
I mean, are we all going to be interviewed by robots soon?
Well, this increasing use of AI in recruitment is definitely a hot topic right now. Both Reed and GWT podcast articles mention that. And it makes sense, right? AI can quickly sift through applications. It can analyze resumes for specific skills, which can be really efficient.
Sure.
But
there's always a but.
Yeah.
Is it going to take over the world?
Right. The human touch is still so crucial in this process. And I think that's something that we can't lose sight of because, you don't want to lose that personal connection.
Yeah, reading between the lines, those gut feelings you get when you're interviewing someone.
Exactly.
So we've got AI shaking things up, the workplace evolving at lightning speed. Companies are laser focused on skills. But I think there's another major force at play here that we have to talk about, and that's sustainability. Both Coursera and Kaizen, in their piece, highlighted the growing demand for sustainable business practices. And we're not just talking about, swapping plastic straws for paper straws here, right? We're talking about a fundamental shift in how businesses operate.
Absolutely. It's about, really thinking about things like the circular economy and really fighting against things like greenwashing. It's about building businesses that are both environmentally and socially responsible at their core.
And this is interesting because Kaizen actually made the argument that this goes beyond just doing the right thing. It's good for business.
Absolutely.
Consumers, they're actively seeking out brands that align with their values, and they're willing to pay more for it.
Yeah, and I think, it's interesting, that whole concept of brand loyalty comes into play here because,
Oh, I suggest that.
is it a genuine concern or is there an element of, social pressure? Like, I need to be seen with this brand.
It's probably a little bit of both.
Yeah, I think there's no denying that there's a growing awareness and concern, especially with, younger generations. But I also think that there is this sense of, wanting to be associated with brands that reflect your values, like you're saying, So I think it's a little bit of both.
So it's not just good for the planet, it's good for business. Sustainable practices aren't just a trend, they're becoming non-negotiable for success. And speaking of staying ahead of the curve, let's talk about the experience economy. Both Kaizen and the GWT podcast talked about this, emphasizing the importance of personalization. But how do you actually personalize on a massive scale?
Well, that's where this whole rise of online communities comes in that Coursera talked about, where brands are realizing, okay, to create that genuine connection, we need to foster this sense of belonging, of community around our brand.
Yeah, it's like you're creating a tribe of loyal customers who feel connected not just to your brand, but to each other.
Exactly.
It's about building something bigger.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've got some pretty major trends impacting the business landscape. AI is changing how we work and create. Remote work is redefining company cultures. Skills are taking center stage. Sustainability is becoming non-negotiable. And we've got this really fascinating shift toward community building in the experience economy.
And that's not all, right? We've only just begun to scratch the surface here. We've got a whole bunch more to unpack, so let's talk about the continued rise of e-commerce. Coursera is saying this boom is far from over. So what's driving this continued growth, even with, things seemingly going back to, quote, normal? Yeah, it's more than just convenience at this point. I mean, it is definitely more convenient to shop online in many ways, but it goes beyond that, right? I mean, the choice, the personalization that e-commerce offers is something that you just can't replicate in a physical store.
Yeah, you can't beat browsing a million options from your couch.
Exactly. You can find anything from anywhere in the world. You can compare prices. You can get it all delivered right to your door. So I think from a consumer standpoint, it's incredibly powerful. And then, of course, you look at it from a business perspective, and it opens up so many opportunities in terms of not being limited by those physical locations.
It's global. The market is just wide open.
Absolutely.
That also means that businesses need to stay on their toes, right?
Absolutely.
So they need to be ready to adapt.
And I think that's where we see this trend with subscription-based models, which Coursera also highlights in their report, where it's not just your Netflix and your Spotify anymore.
Right.
It's everything. It's meal kits, it's clothing, it's software. I mean, you can even subscribe to cars now.
Yeah, it's like everything. And is there any, is it sustainable? Because I feel like consumers are just getting hit with subscriptions from every angle these days.
Yeah, it's a really interesting question because I do think there's a lot of potential with the subscription model, right? Especially for businesses, because it gives you that recurring revenue, it gives you predictability.
It's very appealing.
It's very appealing. But I think that being said, it's not a one-size-fits-all solution. Businesses need to really carefully consider, does this align with their product or service? And most importantly, is it adding value to the customer?
Right.
Nobody wants to feel trapped in some subscription
Like they're stuck.
they don't want or need. So I think it's about finding that sweet spot.
Where everybody wins.
Exactly, where both the business and the consumer benefit from this ongoing relationship.
And speaking of relationships, let's
Yeah.
talk about this idea of strategic brand partnerships.
Yes.
Because Coursera talked about that as well. And it seems like such a great way to kind of expand your reach and tap into new markets. But I think the question becomes, how do you even begin to find the right partner for something like that?
It's a great question. I think it goes beyond just finding brands that have similar target audiences. I think the most successful partnerships are built on this foundation of shared values,
Shared values.
a common vision. So it's really about finding those brands that complement each other, not necessarily compete with each other, and creating something together that's unique, that's valuable.
I love that.
Yeah.
It's like peanut butter and jelly, right?
Exactly.
They're great on their own, but you put them together.
Yeah,
Magic.
Exactly.
But is that something that only big brands can do? Or can smaller businesses, even individuals, benefit from thinking about partnerships?
No, absolutely. In fact, I would argue that, strategic partnerships can be even more impactful for smaller players because it allows them to kind of level the playing field. They can tap into resources, tap into expertise they might not have in-house, and it gives them that exposure to a wider audience.
Right. So we're talking about collaboration over competition.
Absolutely.
Which I think is a theme we're seeing a lot with some of these trends.
Okay.
But let's kind of shift gears here a little bit and talk about the people behind the businesses, because we talked about, the workplace is evolving, but what about the actual perks and benefits that companies are offering?
Right.
Coursera actually mentioned evolving employee benefits as a key trend. So what's changing there?
Well, I think we're seeing this big shift from kind of the superficial perks, like the ping pong tables, which, don't get me wrong, those are still fun, but to more meaningful benefits that actually address the well-being of employees.
Yeah.
So it's not just about the fun stuff anymore. It's about, what can companies do to really support their employees?
So what are we talking about here? What are some of those things?
Well, Coursera highlighted things like, professional development opportunities, generous parental leave policies, making sure there are really robust mental health resources available to employees, even financial wellness programs.
Wow. So it's like you're investing in their well-being on all levels.
Exactly.
Not just, here's your paycheck, now go do your job.
No, exactly. It's about recognizing that employees are human beings with, lives and needs outside of work. And when you invest in your employees, they're going to invest more in their work.
Right. Everybody wins.
Everybody wins.
Less turnover, happier employees, better work.
Exactly.
All right. So we've got e-commerce booming, subscription models changing the game, strategic partnerships fostering collaboration, employee benefits getting a much-needed makeover. What's next?
Well, why don't we dive into some of the game-changing technological advancements that are happening right now? So things like augmented reality, virtual reality. These technologies are really poised to revolutionize so many industries, from retail and entertainment to healthcare and education.
It's true. And I feel like those are things we hear about, but we're not quite there yet. I think AR, VR offers these really immersive experiences, but we're still waiting for it to really take off.
We are, and I think it's coming. Imagine trying on clothes virtually from your own home, or, using VR to step into a historical event. The possibilities are truly endless.
Endless possibilities.
Yes. And then, of course, we've been talking about this throughout, but DEI initiatives continue to be crucial.
Yeah.
Especially in today's diverse world, companies are really realizing the importance of creating a workplace where everyone feels valued and respected.
Yeah, and it's not just the right thing to do. Obviously it is, but it's also just good business.
Absolutely.
You've got different perspectives, different experiences. All of that just leads to better decision making.
Exactly. It's good for everybody.
It is. It is. And then, of course, you can't talk about, the future of business without talking about the generation that's going to be shaping it. So, Gen Z.
The digital natives.
Yes, exactly. They've grown up with technology at their fingertips. They're not afraid to use their voices.
And their wallets, right?
Yes, exactly. To support brands that they believe in. So, what do businesses need to know about marketing to this generation?
Yeah, because they're a whole different breed.
They are. They're a different breed.
Yeah.
And Coursera actually highlights some really important things that Gen Z values. Authenticity, transparency, social responsibility.
They can smell BS a mile away.
Oh, absolutely they can. So, this isn't about just slapping a catchy slogan on something anymore.
It's got to be real.
It's got to be real. It's got to be genuine. Yeah. All right. So we've got to be authentic. We've got to care about things. What other trends should we have on our radar as we think about the future of business?
Well, one that we haven't touched on yet, but I think is really important, is values-based marketing.
Okay, so tell me more about that.
So this is really where companies are leading with their mission. They're leading with their values. They're trying to connect with their customers on a deeper level.
Which makes sense, again, given everything we just talked about.
Exactly.
With Gen Z, sustainability, it's not just about selling a product. You've got to stand for something.
Absolutely.
I love that.
And then finally, we have to talk about the increasing role of technology in customer service.
Right.
Specifically, chatbots.
Chatbots. Yeah, it seems like they're popping up everywhere. Is this the end of human interaction, though, as we know it?
Well, I don't know about all that, but chatbots, they are changing the customer service landscape for sure. But I think it's about finding that balance, right? Because they can be so helpful, especially for those more routine inquiries.
Right.
They can provide that 24/7 support, and it really frees up the human agents to focus on those more complex issues, which I think is beneficial for everyone. And honestly, some of these chatbots are getting really good at mimicking human conversation. The Coursera report, they actually talked about how some of them are learning to respond to questions, anticipate needs even. It's pretty incredible.
It's true. And it's amazing how far that technology has come.
It is.
But I also feel like if it's not implemented very, very thoughtfully, it can backfire.
Oh, for sure.
Because, sometimes you just want to talk to a human,
Absolutely.
especially if you have a problem.
Absolutely.
Like, you don't want to be dealing with a robot when you're already frustrated.
No, nobody wants that. So I think, yeah, like you said, it's about finding that balance between that automation and the human touch. And you know what? I feel like that's kind of a theme that's coming through with all of these trends we've been talking about.
It's true. And you kind of hit it on the head at the beginning, right? Like, it's not just about knowing the trends, it's about knowing how to use them. But the question becomes, with so much changing so rapidly, how do you even keep up, let alone get ahead?
It's a great question, and the Forbes Technology Council had some really good advice for this, I thought, and it was geared towards tech teams, but I think it applies across industries, which is you have to be actively seeking out new tools, new information. Don't wait for the change to happen to you. Go out and find it.
Yeah, don't be reactive, be proactive. But how do you actually do that, though? I mean, is it just like constantly scrolling on LinkedIn? Are we supposed to go to every single conference? What does that actually look like?
It's funny you say that because I think both the GWT podcast and Coursera actually talked about this in terms of it's not about doing everything.
Right.
It's about quality over quantity. So I think it's about being strategic. It's about saying, okay, what are my goals? And then seeking out the information and resources that are actually going to help you achieve those goals.
So it's almost like you create your own little personalized learning plan.
Exactly. Yeah, like what works for you?
Yeah.
Is it subscribing to some industry publications? Is it joining a relevant online community?
Taking a course.
Taking a course, yeah, going to a workshop. I mean, there are so many different ways to do it. But the key is, figure out what works for you and make it a habit.
Yeah, invest in yourself.
Exactly.
Invest in your learning.
Yes.
But, like you said, it's got to be targeted. It's got to be something that's actually going to move the needle.
Exactly.
Because it's easy to get overwhelmed.
Oh, it is so easy to get overwhelmed. Absolutely.
Because there's a lot out there.
A lot, yeah.
Too much. But I think the biggest takeaway for me, and you've kind of touched on this, is you can follow the trends, but if you really want to get ahead, you need to anticipate them.
Yes, 100%.
I feel like both GWT, the podcast, and Kaizen talked about this in different ways, but it's really about understanding the why.
Yes.
Like, why are these trends happening?
Exactly. Look beyond what's on the surface.
Exactly.
What are those underlying factors that are driving these trends?
Because if you understand the why, then you can kind of start to predict the what's next.
Exactly.
So you're not just reacting to the current landscape, you're anticipating the future. And that, to me, feels very powerful.
Incredibly powerful. And I think that's, really what it boils down to. Like you said at the very beginning, it's about understanding those forces that are shaping the future.
Yes.
And then using that knowledge to make decisions and shape your own future.
There you have it.
There it is.
Your 2024 business trends cheat sheet,
Exactly.
packed with insights to help you navigate the always exciting, sometimes overwhelming world of business.
Always evolving.
We covered it all, from AI, the future of work, sustainability, the experience economy, all the things. So go forth and make some waves out there. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. We'll see you next time.